Good morning, Jennifer Brown. How are you?
Happy Monday, Genty Grace. How are you?
Just living the dream.
Self-employed, living the dream, pandemic land,
Yeah.
where each week and day blends into the next. And and we're somewhere between vaccinations and getting sick from those, which is fun.
Right.
I have number 2 coming up, and number 1 was not fun for me. So I'm clearing my calendar.
I have number 1 today at 3. So we shall see how
Okay.
that goes. Yeah.
We shall
Fingers
see.
crossed.
Yes. Fingers and toes.
Yeah. We'll see. I'll keep you posted.
Okay.
But yes. So any quick kind of things that you're working on, announcements before we bring on our guest today?
Yes, quickly. May 4th, we have our next online DEI Foundations Programs. So for those of you that don't know what DEI is, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Maybe you've heard it's a it's a hot topic right now. I hope so. So we're doing an online 6-week blended learning program. And we have a nice system worked out where I think it's very helpful for busy people. And it's also geared towards I would say the beginning learner, meaning somebody who's just uncovering their diversity story and understanding the connection of who we are identity-wise to the organization. That's what our specialty is at Jennifer Brown Consulting. So if you want to find out more, it starts May 4th. It runs 6 weeks, and go to jenniferbrownconsulting.com under courses, and you'll see DEI Foundations course there. And join our mailing list while you're at it. Get involved. Check out the other things we have, like the weekly community calls on Thursdays at noon Eastern, which are also incredible learning for people that are both just starting out in this topic and field as volunteer advocates and passionate individuals, and also people who do this for a living. If that's what you hope to do someday, we are the place you want to be.
Yeah.
And how about you, Jen?
So I'm on day 2 of my 10-day workshop.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Publisher Purpose Author Lab. So if you're watching this on Facebook and you want to kind of learn the skills that you need to get your manuscript written, and we just started yesterday. So we're only on day 2. So there's plenty of time to catch up. It's 10 days and it's very sequential in building. So at the end of the 10 days, people have like a blueprint and a roadmap of how they're going to go out and get their book actually finally written. And so I have people in the group that have been working on their book for 3 decades. And I have people where it is like a brand new thought. And so it doesn't matter how long you've been thinking about writing your book, but what I know to be true is that you need accountability, you need community, you need structure and some kind of rhythm and routine that can help you kind of get it done. So it is 10 days straight. So I will be live at 1:30 Eastern time every day for the next 9 more days.
You're
and
amazing.
I love it so much. It just brings me so much joy. So anyone who's interested, it's completely free. There's no catch, no nothing, just Publisher Purpose Author Lab, and you can hop right in. And all of them are available on replay. So if anyone comes in late, you can watch, you can totally catch up. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm very, very excited about it.
Awesome. I'm such a fan, Jen. I just want to give you kudos for what you do. And I have been the beneficiary of your guidance. So I can speak from personal experience that you know what you're doing and you do what you say you're going to do. And then some, you over deliver just because that's the way you roll. So
thank you. If we weren't as close friends as we were, I would use your testimonies all over the place, but I feel like it would be way too obvious. I'm like, okay, obviously she's just being nice.
No, I'm a true believer. It goes beyond that. It does.
I know. So I'm really, and I overuse the word excited. I have to find a different word, but I'm really thrilled to be talking to our guest today, who is Mary Perry, and we've brought her on the screen. Good morning, Mary.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, Mary.
It's so good to have you here. So Jen and I know what you're up to, and I certainly know what you're up to because of your recent release of your book.
Mm-hmm.
But can we kind of start with just, telling folks who are watching a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, again, my name is Mary Perry. I'm a registered dietitian. So I work with people to counsel people on the nutrition, but just a little bit of my background. I actually started out my first career. I worked for the federal government for about 10 years and did program analysis, budget analysis. And I always grew up kind of volunteering, being very service oriented. And as I got to my career, I really missed that aspect of seeing that direct impact of kind of helping people. And so it was kind of my own journey as an adult to become kind of healthy and fit, inspired me to go back to school, become a dietitian, so I could kind of build that professional expertise to help other people kind of on their journey.
Hmm. Excellent.
I'm curious, like just knowing that like it was so data driven kind of from the past. And I would imagine to some degree you have to be data driven with what you're doing and helping people. But was that like a hard leap kind of going from like that very data mindset to supporting people the way you do now?
Not really. I think it's kind of who I am. I grew up, as I mentioned, kind of volunteering. For years, I used to volunteer at a home for the elderly. And, looking back, it just like every experience you have in life, it just builds kind of who you are. And it serves you later on in life when you don't even realize it's going to. And so I used to go and I used to ride my bike as a kid because I think I was like about fourth or fifth grade. I'd ride over there at least once a week and I would visit with the residents. And it's amazing how at a young age, when I think back to that now, it's like it just, I've always loved people, but it really developed that love of people. But I think kind of having that ability to sit and listen and really connect with people. I've always been kind of passionate about that. And so this was kind of like a natural, I guess, leap. As I said, my kind of love for nutrition and fitness that developed as an adult, and then my love for people, it just kind of came together and is the perfect career.
That's so good.
That's great. I mean, your work is more important than ever, I would imagine, because our relationship to food in the pandemic probably is something you've dived deeply into. And what would you share about your reflections on perhaps what has changed? What are you? Are there encouraging signs or worrisome signs about the way our relationship to food and how it's been impacted by what's occurred over the last year?
Yeah, I really think, with the pandemic, it's really intensified things. I think it's caused a lot of people to kind of re-examine that relationship with food. So there's a recent study that came out that kind of cited, I think like the average weight gain for a lot of people was about 19 pounds over the past year. And then for millennials, it was even higher. It was like 29 pounds.
Wow.
So again, if you think about it, for a lot of us kind of, oh gosh, we live such busy lifestyles. It's very different from like when I was growing up where like going out to eat was a treat. We do it maybe once a week or get takeout once a week. And now our lives are just different. And it's actually unusual if I have someone come to me and saying they actually cook, and it's very unique. But I think with the pandemic, with everybody being at home, kind of, a lot of times people ordering takeout, and then, food is always a very comforting thing, but I think the pandemic really intensified that. And I think it was really interesting. One of the reasons I wrote the book is I really noticed, especially during the pandemic, is there is a lot of my clients had some similar characteristics. So, and I really wrote the book for them because it's the people that would come see me, but I call them, the go-to people, the people that we all have those in our life when you're having a hard time or you need support, you're like, I know I can call so-and-so. And they're the strong people, they're kind of taking care of everything. And when you look at them, you say, oh, they're very successful. They seem to have everything together. But sometimes food is the one area where they continue to struggle with. And it's interesting because, the pandemic, I have a variety of clients I work with, but it was this population that really clung to me during this time. And I was really happy to see that because I think they realized that they really needed extra support during this time with this extra stress and pressure. And so that's, like one thing I saw. And a lot of people got through this past year and they said, a lot of my friends are telling me that the weight has changed, and they're like, that hasn't been my experience from working with you, because they knew they had that support to kind of get through a very difficult time. So, but anyway, like you were saying, I think with the pandemic, it's, people really saw their relationship with food very up close because, are you just at home so much? And it really made people start to think about, why we eat, how we're choosing food for comfort, but then how that was causing a lot of other stress and issues.
So is it a fair takeaway that, or a correlation that if you have that right support system in your life, you can better manage kind of what you're putting into your body, whether it's professional support like yourself or that go-to person?
I think so. I mean, that support and accountability, it can make the difference between, staying where you are, or maybe going to a place that is very difficult versus kind of like moving forward. So I wanted to share a story that happened yesterday, actually, that kind of talks about this point, which it kind of gives me the chills when it happened. So yesterday, I wanted to go buy a blouse for my podcast today, so I would look nice for you all. And so I literally, I never really go to the stores. I never go to the mall, but I had a friend suggest, why don't you go to the store? I think they might have some things. So I'm like, okay. So I was kind of dragging my feet. I got to the store yesterday and I was trying things on, and there's another lady in the dressing room next to me. And we came out and we're looking in the big mirror at the same time. And she was really stressed. I could tell she was kind of emotional. And, so we started chatting and I said, oh, that looks really nice. And she just started sharing that. She's like, I don't feel good about myself. I've gained so much weight this past year. I don't feel good in my body. She didn't want to buy the clothes because she just was in kind of, a bad place. And, and I just told her, I said, look, we've all been in places where maybe we aren't exactly where we want to be. Maybe we're not feeling as positive. But I said, the most important thing is to wear things that feel good to you, that make you feel good. But she shared with me, she's like, I was losing weight. I just gained all this weight. Her father had just passed away. She had just moved to the area. She didn't have a support system. And I'm very sensitive. It's like, I never want to insert myself or say anything that would make someone uncomfortable. But I said, I really hope you don't mind if I share this. But strangely enough, I said, I just wrote a book about all these issues that you're talking about why it's not about the food and how we use food for comfort. And so I said, would it be all right if I gave you my information? And then if it's something where you want to reach out, I think the book might be helpful. And if you want to contact me. And she was just crying. And I almost started to cry in the dressing room. I think the sales lady was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But, I said to her, I said, just what I said to you now, it's like, I have never been to the store before, ever. I never come to the mall. I said, the fact that we are both here at the exact same time, at the exact same place. And I said, something's going on in the universe that we are meant to meet. Mm-hmm. So I thank you for indulging me in kind of probably a longer story than you wanted. But the reason, I wanted to share that is kind of what you're saying about the pandemic is that, for someone like that who really needed support, that was maybe the difference for her, not having it, causing her to get to a place that she wasn't feeling very positive about. Mm-hmm. And so I just, I drove home and I just had to think about this. I'm still thinking about this today. This is why I wrote the book. Mm-hmm. This is why, because I know there's a community of people out there, my clients who've come to see me, but the fact that the universe sent me this lovely person to talk to, this is my passion. And this is why this is so important to me. So I appreciate you letting me tell that story because I just think it's very powerful.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful story. And I think there's so much to kind of even unpack with just that little bit. But yeah, like the divine timing of it all, where, that person just happened to be there. But I also think it's a testament to who you are as a registered dietitian, because there's probably plenty of others who have similar credentials, or maybe a nutritionist or someone who would have immediately just kind of went in for like, oh, here's somebody that can buy something from me. Whereas you were so like in that emotional moment with that person. And I think that's where the power was, where you were like really just allowing that person to be emotional and kind of hold that space for them, which I don't think enough people know how to hold the space for others.
Well, I think that's what kind of makes me unique is that, and that's also why I wrote the book. Like when people come to see me, sometimes maybe on the surface, it might say, oh, I kind of want to manage weight or maybe lower my blood sugar or things. So maybe I get a little note in their record that, says something like that. But when people come through the door, I always ask them, why did you come to see me today? And it kind of opens the door and allows them space to tell their story. And, I feel so honored by that because I know just coming to see me, again, that word dietitian, can be very scary to a lot of people because it's very clinical sounding. People worry that they're going to be, judged. Nutrition is such a personal topic. And so I try to make them as comfortable as possible because I know how difficult it is to open up, or sometimes, people start talking and you start getting a little sweaty or you start getting a little nervous. And, because then you suddenly realize it's like, wow, there's a lot of personal stuff here. But, I went back to school because I wanted the professional expertise, so I could counsel people well in their food choices. But you also have to look at the whole person and what's going on. So again, like the woman that I met at the mall yesterday, someone might say, oh, if your weight went up, well, you just need to exercise more and, eat a little bit less, right? That would be the surface answer. But it wasn't about the food. It was about the fact that, her father passed away. She was in a new area. She didn't have a support system. Is kind of just struggling with several different things. And so we have to kind of take that into account as well, like that whole bigger picture. So that's kind of how I approach things.
Mm. Yeah, I'm curious, Mary, so when you went to write the book, the structure of almost like Mary in your pocket, right? If I can't work with you, I can at least read this book and it's going to reach a much bigger audience than you could ever reach, which is why we love being authors, because it extends our work. But when you wrote it, I wondered what choices you made in terms of structure to help people make this very practical, feel that support was coming through the pages. And also if there's anything difficult in writing the book for you, anything that felt really personal or vulnerable to share, and what your process was in terms of weaving your own story in.
Yeah. So when I started, I did a lot like with pictures or visuals. So I knew, I always say that phrase, it's not about the food. So that was just crystal clear to me. And then just kind of on paper, just writing other key phrases. Like another thing I always tell my clients is like, your weight tells the story of your life. And so when I look and I see changes going on, I'll say to people, hey, what was going on here? Because it's never about the surface, and people will share, they'll open up, they'll be like, oh, I had a death in my family, or I was going through a job loss or a divorce, or, and sometimes it makes the weight increase, sometimes decrease, sometimes, other things are going on. So that was like definitely a theme. Talking about like mindset, because working with so many people, I would just witness kind of all the changes that made the difference between someone, as I mentioned, earlier, kind of staying stuck and moving forward. So that was a big component. Looking at kind of how we change as people, what are the stages of change, which I kind of talk about as well. Kind of that imaging, like who we see we are currently, who we see ourselves in the future, and kind of having, I was talking about this weekend, this idea of vision and hope. Okay. And I feel like personally, I'm kind of a late bloomer, so it's like doing a second career. I didn't really do a lot of international travel till really in my 40s and things like that. And I'm very strong believer in that no matter where you are or what you want to do, you shouldn't let age kind of define you, or you shouldn't kind of go into preconceived notions of what that means, because I really believe it's like, if you have hope and a vision, and the right support, you can get what you want, where you want to go. So that was like another component, of the book. So basically all the lessons that I saw that made people kind of like be successful, is I wanted to capture that in the book. And so my purpose was to have a very like comforting conversation. So I know when I was going through writing the book, some of the kind of the editing comments were like, well, maybe have like a worksheet or this or that. And I purposely left those out, because my plan is hopefully to have like separate, like training courses and worksheets that we can get a little bit more into even the practical side of like practicing some of these skills. But I wanted the book to be a conversation so that when you read it, you felt like Mary understands me. I'm talking to a friend. Kind of get to know me a little bit as well, and also giving you things to start thinking about, okay, well, how do I change my life? So that was kind of the impetus. In terms of, I didn't really struggle with like sharing the personal stories, but I had to laugh because now, it's only been out for a little bit and people are starting to read it. And then now I start to think it's like, oh yeah, I did write that, didn't I? And so I'm sure people will be like, that part, about this in your life. And I'll be like, oh, how do you know that? It's like, oh, that's right. I wrote that. But it's, it's all good. And I think part of the reason I wrote the book is that, I felt I could see the impact, I was having on people's lives. And I just felt I really wanted to share that broader message to see if I could help people on a wider level. And part of that is, I think, being open and being vulnerable. Again, it's like I'm just getting back into the social media game. And as we all know, a lot of times there's very sanitized images out there, presentations. And it's good to have things that make you kind of aspire to something, but it's also important to know that's not necessarily real life, and to know that someone you're coming to see understands you, has kind of been through it personally, but also has a professional education, training, and experience that can kind of help you move forward as well.
Yeah, I feel like society doesn't do us any favors, and social media doesn't do us any favors. I saw a meme yesterday that was like Kim Kardashian, maybe it was one of the Kardashians, I don't know which one, on a boat. And then it was a woman next to her. So it was like Kardashian on a boat, and then like me on a boat. And it was like a realistic picture of somebody that's like got the vest on, their hair's a mess. Like, even when you look at that, you're like, obviously I look like a mess on the boat. It like you feel like, okay, like we're all messes on a boat. None of us are Kim Kardashian. But at the same time, it doesn't actually help you feel any more good about yourself. Like you feel like relatable, like, hey, this person's also a hot mess on a boat, but that doesn't actually translate to, oh, that makes me feel good about myself and what my appearance looks like. So I feel like social media, in some of those ways where it's like trying to at least build a sense of community of like, yeah, this is all what we look like, doesn't actually still help the root or those emotions that might come up about like, how you might look as one kind of piece of all of this.
Yeah, there's definitely, there's a lot of pressure, and I talk about in the book too. I had a good time kind of going down memory lane, because I grew up, in like late 70s, the 80s, that was my formative years. And I talk about some of the TV shows that I used to watch, things like The Love Boat and all this kind of stuff. And in the book, I write about this. I just kind of laugh because, as a kid, I would see these images of, the glamorous, people, and they're all dressed up, and, they look gorgeous. And as a kid, who didn't feel very positive about the way she looked, I was like, okay, well, I know when I get to be an adult, it's like, I can get there, and I'm going to have, I'll be wearing like bejeweled bikinis and high heels all the time. And that vision obviously didn't come true, but that, thank goodness. But it's interesting to see like the images you have and that you think about, and then what life, most of the time it's like, I'm in, exercise clothes with my hair pulled back. So I got fancied up for you all today, but but the reality is, I'm very casual. So, but I think for all of us, it's like, we all have both within us, and I think it's important to honor all of that, who we look in our more casual times, but also, whatever makes you feel good, whatever brings out the best in you. I think that's good to honor that as well too.
Excellent message, Mary. I love it. I wanted to know your perspective on some of the health apps. Do you have a point of view on things like a Noom or something? There's like so much technology behind an AI behind some of these things that are, I think, helping us build better habits. And sometimes like our approach probably should be in the analog world, but also take advantage of what technology can do too. I love my Fitbit, because I look at my calories and I force myself to get up and do that walk, even though I don't feel like it, because I'm holding myself accountable to that. And keeping track, of course, what you eat and your water intake and all those other metrics, sleep, so all of this stuff, like you talk about holistic health. But I wonder, what is your view on tech that alleges to help us build better habits in terms of our eating, food choices, but also health in general?
Yeah, so I'm actually also a fan of all that tech. So a lot of times too, like if people come to me and they've never really looked at or examined what they're eating, I compare a lot to budgeting. So like if you've never had a budget and you have no idea what the price tag on is anything, I think it is very helpful to kind of pause and take a look at that. So for some people, using like a tracking app like MyFitnessPal, or other people like the Noom app and looking at habits, or, again, I have, like the tracker, because that helps me just to remind me to keep moving. but again, it's a very fluid thing. So I have some clients that we kind of start with that, because I think the first step to change is always having an awareness. It's like you want to have a mindfulness and an understanding of like, what am I really doing right now? And then we kind of go from there. So some people like will start tracking or doing some of these wearables, and they love it. They're like, oh my gosh, this has opened my eyes. Other people hate it and they do it for a little bit and they're like, I never want to do this again. I'm like, that's okay. So I always tell people there's a lot of ways to approach healthy eating. And even though, we've talked about more the holistic aspect, I'm also very practical, like practical suggestions, looking at the tech, how can it help you? Everything as I look is tools in a toolbox, right? And then it's kind of knowing my client, where their mindset's at, what's going to be helpful for them. So like, I'll give you another example. There is another app called 8. It just like U8, I think. And so all you do is you take pictures of what you eat, and then you kind of like can write like how you're feeling. Were you hungry? Were you stressed? Were you tired? And so I have a lot of clients that will use that because it's less stressful for them than looking at numbers or managing to that, but it still gives them a way to be mindful and aware of what they're doing as well. So it's like a lot of times, I listen to a lot of different, I don't know, podcasts or other nutrition professionals, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I think all of these things fit together. And again, my role is to kind of facilitate what I think is going to be the most helpful for you and also what the most mentally healthy. So if I have someone come to me who maybe has a disordered eating past, then maybe that's probably not a good match for what we want to do. So I think, as I said, it's kind of on a continuum, and there's a lot of ways we can approach this.
Such a good, well-balanced answer versus like the whole, because I'm sure there's plenty of professionals who potentially treat it as an all or nothing type of thing and are very maybe rigid and demanding. And I feel like I'm a data-driven person, so I love those apps all day long, but I can totally see how somebody who doesn't want the data would be really kind of uncomfortable by all of it. So yeah, I think it's just all kind of personal preference. I've been using MyFitnessPal since 2011.
Okay.
Wow.
So no, 2012. Sorry, let me not.
Okay.
Almost 10 years. But yeah, I love it, and I use it every day for almost a decade. Just helps, keep you on track.
Yeah, and so that's a really good. Again, I have a lot of people. That's a really good match for. And so, as I said, whether it's these different tools, I always tell people there's a lot of ways to eat healthy, and I always try and honor. It's like, where are you trying to get to, your mindset. And then we put things together. So that's going to serve you the best. So that's kind of how I look at it.
So good.
I love it. You're doing so much good in the world. Thanks, Mary, for, you're supporting people and holding space for them and seeing them in their struggles with food and the reasons why that underlie that and those decisions and really supporting people at the heart of those choices that they're making. Because I think that you're getting really to the root cause versus just kind of treating the symptom superficially. So your book does really well, and I'm looking forward to supporting it.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, and just a last thought as we were talking is, I think, especially with the pandemic, it's this connection. We all want connection, and I think, especially with nutrition, with the person I met, at the mall, it's like, we're all really realizing the importance of that. So, to me, the key points is like, we all want to be seen, we all want to be heard, and we all want to be connected. And so if I can do that for anyone, that's my passion.
It's so beautiful. And that's such a commonality between the three of us, all execution of very different businesses, but that is so the commonality between the three of us, which is super cool. Mary, can you show your book just for a quick visual? I know you have
a copy. Yeah. So it's not about the
beautiful
food.
So gorgeous.
Nice design.
So, yeah. Oh, it's so good. And obviously I'm biased, but so for anyone who is interested in your book, they can purchase it pretty much wherever they can find a book. So, and then Mary, your any other ways that you want to advise people that they can get in touch with you?
Sure. You can always go to my website. It's just maryperry.com, all one word. I'm also on Instagram now. So it's just maryperry_nutrition.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much, Mary. This was such a great, just a beautiful, I love that story. I feel like that story anchored all of the things. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's been a really good conversation.
Okay, thank you both so much.
Have a good rest of your day, Jen. I will see you
Jen.
next week for another conversation with who knows who.
Another amazing person. Absolutely.
Yeah, right?
Thank you. Thanks, Jen. And thanks, Mary, for joining us.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.